Hi everyone and welcome to Value Open Source, our podcast about everything that's related to open source. This is our third episode and I'm very happy to welcome David Ben Tolila as my guest for this episode. David is a veteran of the IDF intelligence unit and an IT manager there, a former system engineer at Elbit, working one of Elbit's largest projects, which was the Digital Army project for the IDF. Founder and chairman of Energy Team, which is a consultancy firm for large enterprises, and a vice chairman of the Israeli IT Chamber. David, welcome. That was a long introduction.
Great, thanks.
It's great having you here. So it's a very long introduction. Can you just run us through what you're doing these days? Like, can you talk about the Israeli IT Chamber, for example?
Yes, I would like to. First of all, the Israeli IT Chamber is a non-profit organization. It was founded 50 years ago, but actually we are, in the last 3 years, we are under a huge revolution and a big momentum. We founded more than 10 Center of Excellence in the areas of digital transformation, data innovation, ALM, infrastructure and cloud, cyber security, multimedia, blockchain, innovation, of course, entrepreneurship, and Industry 4.0. We had enrolled more than 50 large enterprises company from all the sectors, starting from banking, credit cards, insurance company, healthcare organizations, the Homeland Security organizations, of course, academy, etc. And from this, I know all of the resources about the open source approach in large enterprises. And actually, for this podcast, I made a little research and talked with more than 15 CIOs who are members in the Israeli IT Chambers. Mm-hmm. And there are quite a few insights that I would like to share with you about open source.
We would love to.
I just want to say about the Israeli IT Chamber that I'm welcoming everybody to register to our chamber. The site, if I may, is israel-it.org.
We'll add it in the comments, so our Israeli viewers are more than welcome to read the comments and check out the website.
Great, and this is the place to be if you want to be a self-learner and want to invest in your self-improvement in the area of IT professionals.
Awesome. Okay, so can you tell us a bit about Energy Team, your company, your consultancy firm, and what you guys are doing there?
So I founded Energy Team in 2008. Nowadays we are like 50 consultants. We are doing consultancy in the areas of digital transformation, IT strategy for large enterprises. We are doing a lot of consultancy around disaster recovery and business continuity plans. We are doing a lot of work around budget, which is a huge interest in large enterprises. Mm-hmm. And this is also related to our topic of open source. Yeah. Because we found out that a lot of companies who consider or doing work with open source, going to the open source approach because of the motivation of
saving money,
and not understanding all of the big picture. Yeah. Because I think that open source is more than the way we do code, is an approach.
Of course.
It's a culture, it's a way of also enrolling new employees. We will talk about that also. And this is much more deeper and a broader issue than getting some software without money.
Yeah, that's it's a good approach, because a lot of people think that open source is just free software, free in the sense of actually not like free of charge, and that's not the case. And I'm happy to hear that even people from like enterprise are understanding that. Can you tell us a bit about the challenges that enterprise or government sector companies encounter when they develop software, and how open source can help solve those challenges?
Yeah. First of all, we need to distinguish between two groups, and this is very interesting. And this is something I found out in the research I did for this podcast. There is a difference between large enterprises and the army.
Okay.
And you would expect that the army is also a very large enterprise, but it's very unique with this age of developers, the average age of developers.
Because they're fairly young?
Yeah, and their openness and their approach to open source, and a lack of a need to obey some regulations. Because in the army you have operational needs, and nobody cares how you do the software.
How convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. And also you have like a burst of creativity there, and young people that doing all the code and using a lot of open source in the way I didn't think it was so broad.
It's counterintuitive that the army uses open source.
Definitely. Now, let's go back to the large enterprises. Large enterprises have structural obstacles, like all of the legacies.
Yeah.
All of the legacy systems are...
you need backwards compatibility.
Of course. Let's take the banks, okay? All of the banks will have a large, big project of replacing all the legacy system in the coming 10 years. That's for sure. I can say one bank is already there, but all the other big banks will need to transform their systems. They
migrating from mainframe.
Right. They brought
moving to new technologies.
They brought to the end the approach of let's fix that, let's make another patch. They are doing a lot of peripheral things in the digital marketing, and the way you can do onboarding for a bank. This is a lot of new development, but the core is still legacy, and this is also for the finance, for the insurance and the credit card, and also for the healthcare industry. So they have a big legacy. They can do a lot, and what all of the new development they are doing, mostly they prefer to do it in open source, but they still need to maintain their legacy. So actually what we see in the Israeli IT Chamber, that CIOs of these large enterprises sharing with us that the adoption rate of open source code to different with open source infrastructure, and we'll tackle that in a minute, is between 5% with the lowest to 30% with the maximum.
Really, and that's in enterprise,
in large enterprises, not in the army. We will talk about the army in a second. And this is tell us two things. One, we are ahead of the early adopter stage of open source. Open source is a revolution that is here to stay. Yeah. This is for sure, hands down. But we are not advanced like in the US and Europe. The adoption rate there, as for the last survey, I saw that To-Do Group did, and it's on GitHub. I can share with you and the audience the link. They are talking about a much broader percent in large enterprises.
Yeah.
Of course, in the small startups, the percentage is much higher. Now, the percentage is higher also with Israeli large enterprises when we are talking about infrastructure, when we are talking about database, when we are talking about cloud platforms, when we are talking about web developing platforms. Yeah. Of course, operation system. I remember when I was the IT manager in the intelligence corps, talking about moving towards Linux, it was like so irresponsible to do in a lot of ways. And now I think, I'm not sure, but I think there are more Linux VMs than the Microsoft VMs. I'm not sure about it, but the way the ease of use.
It's actually the responsible way is working with Linux as an operating system and not vice versa.
You can say that, and also I think that organizations, the large enterprises, understand like the huge cost of not using open source versus the other costs, and there are costs for using open source. I think we are going there. Now, in the infrastructure, we can see a lot of usage of open source. Of course, if it's not, if it's complementary software like monitoring systems and systems that tools that help us maintain the system, we see a lot of open source there.
But not in the core infrastructure?
We can see also in the core, but this is more challenging.
Yeah.
I think that there are, and as I mentioned before, there are a lot of pioneers in embracing open source infrastructure, and we can see that more in the Army.
Yeah, you said that you will go back to that in a minute. So can you tell us a bit about adoption rates in the Army?
Yeah, actually it's amazing. And also in the Army, in a very good enterprise, there are a lot of armies in the Army, like a lot of organizations, and each unit has its own organizational culture, and you can see the differentiations also in the open source adoption rate. But you can see in special units, when the operations needs are very demanding, you can see there a lot of usage in open source. Programmers prefer to download the code, to enhance already
start with existing code and improve.
To start with existing code and
not
to
start
improve
from scratch.
And not starting from scratch, because there is an urgent need to deal with the core business.
Yeah.
So we can see there, especially in the small units and in the special units.
So when you need to fix something fast, starting with open source is the right way to go instead of tackling difficult problems from scratch.
Of course, and to relate that to my opening notes about the culture, this is their culture. We are talking about kids.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to say that. At the age of 18 to 24, they want the new stuff. They want they don't want to develop in all the closed architecture.
Yeah.
They want the new things. I also was amazed. Like I've talked 2 days ago with one of the highest commanders in this special unit, and she said to me that one of the things that it's important to her is to contribute back to the open source community. And this is something that I wouldn't thought I would hear from somebody in the Army with all of the confidentiality issues
and secrecy, that they will be willing to contribute code back.
And it's you understand that it's a cultural revolution and a deep one.
That's awesome. And I think the Israeli army is a bit different than other armies, which are professional armies. In Israel, the IDF has a young workforce, which is 18 to 21.
Right.
And they get kids that were in high school yesterday, and now they are in the army developing code. And I think that probably allows the IDF to be more flexible and get new blood into the system all of the time.
And I want to add to that. You see youngsters that are to serve in the army with high motivation. And when you ask how come I get from a developer that is so young that it get paid 600 shekels a month, it's
just $150 per month.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And he's working.
Cheap workforce.
It's cheap work, the cheapest I think. Workforce, and he's working hours, crazy hours, and weekends and stuff. because it got a lot of security challenges, and it motivates them to contribute. And I think it's not only the national security challenges and all of this, let's say, patriotic motivation, but also the intellectual and the professional challenges. And this you can't have to the fullest in a closed code systems.
Of course. Yeah, that's very interesting. You spoke a bit about the cultural differences, the organizational cultural differences between working in a proprietary software or legacy versus the open source culture. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure, there is a huge difference between them, and I think that, and this is the high impact that open source has on organization, because it's not it's not only the way we do code. It's a different culture, a different things of doing things. It's a different values, and I'll give you an example. There is a large enterprise in Israel who decided to develop the new software with the new standards, like working with Agile, working with containers, new architecture of a serverless and service mesh, and
all the new buzzwords.
All the new buzzwords, and with you name it, all the top of the line, open source infrastructure and open source platforms, you name it. And they decided that for that to work, they need also new offices, like to separate the team that is going to work on this new product and to give them a new workplace, like it was
a new environment,
the shiniest startup in the Silicon Valley, like with the new kitchens and all of the goodies.
7 types of yogurt.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, what happened is, of course, they succeeded with their product, and they are highly productive, and all of the employees are very motivated. But there is an island of innovation inside an enterprise, which still thinking in the old way, which still needs to maintain his legacy systems, and there was like 2 classes of employees, and that made a lot of tension. So my tip for CIOs that want to think in the new way and in the new approach, to think about the integration. We can do a lot of things also in the legacy software areas in our organization in the new way. And I think that when we are talking about open source, we need to understand that there is a broader impact. There is a cultural impact. There is a process impact. There is something that the organization will be changed because of entering open source. And I don't mean by going and taking one tool from one open source tool for a specific thing, but changing the main architecture or changing the new software architecture for open source.
So you say it goes deeper into the organization. It's not just the code. It's the culture, and it goes everywhere, probably from management to the last of the employees.
Yes, and I think that it's going to be for large enterprises in Israel more and more challenging to enroll employees in this new area where employees want to develop in all the open platforms they know, with the all open platforms they like. So I think that large enterprises in Israel need to consider these platforms only because this is the way they can get
to recruit new employees.
Of course.
We've actually spoken to a few HR managers, and a lot of them said that that candidates they are interviewing for programming positions actively ask if the company contributes to open source, if the company uses open source, because it's a part of things that are meaningful for developers.
Of course. I saw the survey of To-Do Group this year. They did that this year, They interviewed more than 2,700 professionals in many types of organizations, starting from small startups to large enterprises. And a quarter of them said that they prefer to work in organizations that contribute to open source, to the open source community.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've heard several times, that it's important and it's good. It makes us happy as open source enthusiasts that people are taking it seriously. So, from your work with enterprise and the army, what advice can you give to future leaders of the IT world?
Regarding open source?
Regarding open source, regarding how to implement this pretty new approach in their day-to-day work.
I think the key word in your question was leadership. Because when you want to lead, you need to you have to innovate. And when you see the open source approach, when you see the democratization of code, when you see that we are talking about building and contributing to communities, when you see that there is a profound understanding that when you work together to achieve big goals, you can get more, I think that all of these approaches changing the way we do code.
Yeah.
It changes a lot of other things, but specific the way we do code. So IT leaders have to think in adopting open source approaches, have to think about new technologies that they can bring fast to the organization. And I think there's something else there. Something we couldn't say like 5 years ago. Open source products are better than closed one in any field. In the AI, in the cloud platform, in the operation systems, in the developing web developing platforms, of course search engines and databases, big data. You can see that it's not only the budget issues, it's not only the ideal culture of communities.
It actually has real value.
It actually has real value. And I think that 5 years from now, it won't be even a question. Right now, it's not a real question because it's the default choice for starting a new project for, of course, all of the startups, but also for large enterprises when they are not dealing with their core software, and maybe in the future also their core software will be partially or full open source.
All the old legacy will eventually become open source, hopefully.
I really hope so.
Soon, probably.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. And just to finish up, David, we always ask our guests in what ways they keep learning and improving themselves. We ask because we want our audience to know as well and maybe benefit. So what do you do and how do you improve yourself?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Udemy. Like I take courses there, like there were candies. And I have a great experience to share. Like I had a 2-hour trip 4 weeks ago, and so I stopped in the gas station. I logged into my Udemy account, and I've searched for a course, and I found there a great course. I would like to recommend it. How to become a super learner.
Okay.
Which like is a course to all the courses. Like this is something that touched me. And I've started in a very enthusiastic way to learn every day new things because of the technology they demonstrate there. And it's all about expanding your memory capacities and speeding up your reading. Because this is the gateway to learning and to all of the knowledge you're observing. So
awesome.
I recommend that.
How to learn how to learn.
Yeah, to learn how to learn.
Okay, David, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for your time. And thanks for watching, and we'll be back with our fourth episode very soon.